morning, everyone. I'd like to call the McLeod County Board of Commissioners January 3rd meeting to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I was just corrected, it's February 3rd, I guess I said January 3rd. Comes with seniority or age, I guess. Anyway, consideration of agenda items. Any additions or corrections?
I have two changes, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
On the agenda, add item 9D. Consider approving the collective bargaining agreement with Law Enforcement Labor Services Licensed Sergeants, Local 297, which is one of our units at McLeod County, for the period of January 1, 2026 through December 31, 2027, and that will require a vote. 9D, under administration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other additions or corrections?
One more, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
A correction to item 4D, under Auditor Treasurer's Office. That would be, the first paragraph should read, consider approving the findings and order to accept the petition and direct further proceedings for County Ditch 12A. And that requires a vote as well. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to approve the agenda with the addition of the changes and corrections.
And I'll second it.
Motion made by Commissioner Wright and seconded by Commissioner Schmalz to approve the agenda with the corrections. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Consent agenda.
No changes, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, I'll move consent agenda.
Motion made by Commissioner Schmalz. Seconded by Commissioner Cheska. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Start out with the Auditor Treasurer. Connie, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Board. Today I have 4 items. The first 3 are similar, and then this last one is a different system.
Excuse me, Connie, just before we get started, just a reminder that pretty much through your agenda here, we will be acting as the drainage authority. The county board and the drainage authority are the same, but we'll be acting as the drainage authority.
Yes, thank you. So item A is to consider approving the findings in order to file the engineer's report and set the hearing date of County Ditch 8. A summary of the findings and orders was included in the board packet related to the orders of the filing of the engineer's repair reports and setting a hearing date for County Ditches 8, 10, and 36 based on comprehensive inspections of CD 8, 10, and 36 and also concerns by landowners over the functionality of the systems. The board directed its engineer to prepare a report for each system pursuant to Minnesota statutes section 103E.715 for the repairs of CD 8, 10, and 36. The repair reports of those systems have been filed with me, and I would suggest February 24th, 2026 at 9 a.m. or thereafter for the hearing date and time on the engineer's repair reports. After approval, notices will be mailed to all owners of property or political subdivisions likely to be affected by the proposed repairs.
Which is of the board, the most important part. Well, it's all important, but the date of the hearing.
Make a motion to approve.
Motion made by Commissioner Wright to approve. Is there a second?
And I'll second it.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of the findings in order and the engineer's report of JD 8, say
Excuse
aye.
me, CD 8.
CD 8, I'm sorry. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Item B would have the same descriptive, but it would be in consideration of County Ditch 10. So consider approving the findings in order to file the engineer's report and set the hearing date of County Ditch 10 for the same date, 9 o'clock or thereafter.
Wishes of the board as far as having setting the findings and the hearing date?
I'll move to approve.
And second.
Motion made by Commissioner Cheska and seconded by Commissioner Schmalz to approve the February 24th at, I won't say 9 o'clock because we're doing several ditches there, but in that time period, and approve the findings and order of the engineer's report. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. And then item C, consider approving the findings in order to file the engineer's report and set the hearing date of County Ditch 36, same date of February 24th at 9 a.m. or thereafter.
Mr. Chair, I'll move request.
Motion made by Commissioner Schmalz to approve the request of C. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Wright for the hearing date of February 24th, 26, for ditch CD 36. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank
ahead.
you. And item D is to consider approving the findings in order to accept the petition and direct further proceedings of County Ditch 12A. A summary of those findings and orders were included in the packet. They relate to the orders of accepting the petition and directing further proceedings as follows. Mr. Greg Brinkman filed a petition to remove property from the benefited area of McLeod County Ditch 12A. The petitioner alleges he removed the previous tile line and replaced it with a new tile line that flows directly to Buffalo Creek rather than using the CD 12A drainage system as an outlet. The Drainage Authority is authorized under Minnesota Statutes 103E.805 to consider the petition. The board finds the petition is sufficient to initiate proceedings, and the Drainage Authority must evaluate the facts presented before setting, noticing, and holding a hearing on the petition.
Mr. Chair, question?
Go ahead.
Connie, I read through the board packet, I read through the petition as well, and then am I correct in stating that the staff or someone designated will be verifying the claim that the petitioner is making?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Schmalz. I'm familiar with this. I mean, that's exactly what we'll be approving is what the engineer's findings of this are, and I believe it'll all be spelled out, or it's in the packet, I believe. So, could I get a motion to approve that hearing date and the findings?
I can move, Mr. Chair.
Motion made by Commissioner Schmalz. Is there a second? I'll second it. Any other discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
Building maintenance, good morning, Joe.
Good morning. One item for your consideration today. Consider approving a change order with LVC Companies out of Minneapolis, Minnesota for new electronic badge door latches at the cost of $3,193.61 with funds from the courthouse building budget 01-111. The project, we tried to basically use similar latch components to what we had in other door areas, and with the courtroom being as large as it is, with that unit flipping open and closing, it's really distractive and impeding on court processions. So court administration had reached out and asked that we come up with something different that was quieter, and this is that solution.
All right, and the money for this will come out of the courthouse budget?
Correct.
Wishes of the board?
Make a motion to approve.
Motion made by Commissioner Wright to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Chaska. Is there any more discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Environmental Services, good morning, Mark.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Two items for your consideration this morning. Item A, consider approving preliminary plat 25-03 as requested by Gerald Heinz. That is a two-lot preliminary plat to be known as Heinz Addition, described as 14.19 acres of the southeast quarter of the northeast quarter of Section 26 of Oklahoma Township. Lot 1 would be 3.880 acres and Lot 2 would be 9.48 acres. Soil borings indicate that standard septics can be constructed on both lots. The Oklahoma Township Board recommended approval at its meeting on January 8th, 2026. The Hutchinson Area Joint Planning Board unanimously recommended approval on January 21st, 2026. So at the Hutch Joint Planning, there was a public hearing held for this request. We did not have anybody in attendance. Property is owned by Dan and Barb Hebert, and it will be sold to Gerald at the completion of this process, the plating process. But it is a clean plat. Andrew has looked at this from the highway's perspective for access. There will be a shared access between the two lots with plenty of site clearance. So it does not seem to be, there does not seem to be any issues with this.
And Mark, that's what's holding up, I mean, he's waiting for approval of this to finish the sales?
Yeah, it's our
So-
plating process, three-stage sketch plan, preliminary plat, final plat, and just the way our meetings fall, it takes about 6 to 9 months, a little bit longer to get through. So he is at the second process of the plating stage. So he does have 2 meetings if approved today. He'll have 2 more meetings to go through. That would be the Hutch Joint Planning for final plat, which is review of the title opinion or commitment, and then a clean copy of the final plat would need to be approved, reviewed and approved. So he's getting closer.
Thank you. Wishes of the board?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
As stated, there was not any concerns at the Hutchinson Area Joint Planning Board that were brought up, and it seems to fit all the requirements. I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion made by Commissioner Wright to approve. Is there a second?
I can second it.
Seconded by Commissioner Schmalz. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Item B is to consider approving final plat 25-02 as requested by Paul Ratzine, 12149 Lily Street Northwest, Coon Rapids, Minnesota, for a 1-lot final plat for the purpose of an additional building site to be known as Echo Acres. This lot would be located in the southwest quarter of Section 16 Hutchinson Township. The lot size is 4.76 acres. The land use is, adjacent land use is agricultural as well as rural residential. The need for this request is due to the fact that there are 3 other non-farm dwellings in this quarter section. There was a variance granted, 25-05, on August 25th to reduce the setback to a registered feedlot. Mid-Minnesota Septic performed soil borings that indicate a site and alternate site are present for a standard septic system. The title opinion has been sent to the county recorder and the county attorney's office for review. Hutch Township Board recommended approval at its meeting on January 8th, 2026, and the McLeod County Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval at its meeting on January 28th, 2026. So this one is the final meeting for Paul, so I appreciate Paul's work on doing all this. Makes a lot of sense, obviously. It's on his family's property, and he's just looking to get closer to home to help care for his mother, so and get back out to the rural area.
Mr. Chair, I'll move request.
Motion made by Commissioner Schmalz to approve. Is there a second?
I can second.
Seconded by Commissioner Chaska. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm happy that, you know, we could finally get to this final stage here in looking at this request, and also appreciate Mr. Reitzing and, you know, his presence at our meetings, and I wish him luck, and thanks for being here as well.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Go ahead.
McLeod County does have a little bit more of a unique plating process due to the fact that through our sketch plan, we review the hard to farm criteria that we have in ordinance. A lot of counties do not have that level, but we do that because that is a cost-free analysis for the applicant. So if we do find that, you know, it doesn't meet the hard to farm standard, the applicant really isn't owed anything other than their time. So I support the process that was created. It was created back in 1981. I believe that it stood up to the test of time, and it serves our county's function very well.
Thanks, Mark. I have to support the process, and it's just too bad it takes the time it does, but I think it's important for the county too. I mean, we're kind of in between, or close to the metro, so we need to kind of figure this all out. Plus, we do like the economic value of doing it as well. So I'm glad it's where it is too. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Economic development, are we waiting on, we're still waiting? All right, does that why I'm seeing, Eric walking up to the, or Andrew walking up to the mic?
Hey, good
Public
morning.
Works will put ahead, being we're waiting on our speaker for economic development.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Item A, consider approving the 2024 Highway Division Annual Report. The county highway departments are required by the Minnesota Department of Transportation to produce an annual report. This report highlights the 2024 revenues and expenditures of the Road and Bridge Fund, along with other comparison data and historic costs. So the report was included in the board packet for the commissioners and the public to review.
Wishes of the board?
Mr. Chair, I'll move request and then follow up with discussion after a second.
Motion made by Commissioner Schmalz to approve the 2024 Highway Division Annual Report. Is there a second? I'll second it. Discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
Andrew, I read through the report, and it's a time-consuming report. I thank the staff for putting it together. Extremely informational. It is a long read. It's a lot to read, but I just wanted to say thanks for the effort. Thanks for the report. It kind of gives us an awareness of what it costs us to serve McLeod County. I mean, if you really break it down, per mile, or it starts to make quite a bit of sense on why we have the big investment that we do to maintain these systems. Thank you.
Any other discussion? My comment as well, that thanks for the report. It's transparent. I mean, it gives a chance for our constituents and the public to see the costs of everything. I mean, our staff is doing a good job of getting it done, and we have really no control over costs, but that's good awareness of what stuff is costing and why we do like we do. So thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
And then one more question, Andrew. On the bridge on County Road 74 over Buffalo Creek, can you tell us what the status of that particular project is in Bergen Township?
Yep, we are working through the final grading plans on that one, just like we are on County Road 13 and County Road 57 at this time.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to note a thank you to Michelle Headley too for the good communication and working so well with Andrew. It's been a good experience, and you're always timely, so thank you for all of your work on that. I saw the packet you emailed to me before it went to the board agenda, and you have spent a lot of time working on that, and it was very thorough and easy to reference. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
And Andrew, is there a timeline for that particular bridge? I mean, are we programmed in for any slot yet?
We are shooting for, if we can secure some town bridge funds later this season, but if there aren't any town bridge funds, it'll have to push until next season. It all really depends on what the legislature does this year with the funding package.
Thank you.
We do have a motion on the floor, so I kind of need to get at that, and we can take more questions for Andrew. All in favor of approving the annual report, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Either more questions or B?
I do have one question. So we've been talking about 57. Does that need to wait? Did you tell me that there's you can't disturb the water between this time and that time, and so that would also play a factor into if you can,
Yeah, so there is under our DNR permit, there is a fish spawning exclusion period for working in the water, so you cannot disturb the water between, usually it's about March 15th to June 15th, in that time frame.
Okay.
So that plays into the whole bridge replacement construction schedule as well.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Move on to B.
Yep. Item B, consider awarding state project 043618008, the County State Highway 18 Concrete Overlay Project to Schaefer Contracting, Inc. of Schaefer, Minnesota, at a cost of $4,542,335.25 with funds from the highway construction budget. The engineer's estimate for this project was $4,823,850.31. We received 7 other bids ranging from $4,597,000 to $6,560,000. This project received about $3 million in federal funding through the Area Transportation Planning solicitation, and the remainder of the project will be paid for using state aid and local option sales tax funds.
Mr. Chair, that one is right in my neighborhood, so I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion made by Commissioner Wright to approve. Is there a second? I'll second it. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
Question, Andrew. Schaefer sounds like a familiar name. What kind of projects have they done for McLeod County in the last few years?
Yeah, I believe back in 2021, they did the county road, the CSA 3, CSA 2 south of Glencoe, and CSA 15 concrete overlay projects.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Schmalz. Just my comment is, the engineer's estimate it's lower than the engineer's estimate, not by much, and I mean, it's a rationalization, but I guess it comes in line with what we expected, so,
Yep, our goal is to be the middle bidder on every project,
all right.
to be right in the realm of where the prices are.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. C. Morning, John.
Morning.
Morning.
Item C, consider approving an estimate from Wenger Corporation of Owatonna, Minnesota for a 16-foot by 24-foot stage and a 16-foot by 32-foot stage at a total cost of $51,047.55 with funds from the Fairgrounds capital budget. These stages would replace wooden stages that have reached the end of their useful life, and this capital improvement was included in the 2026 budget. Just to note, this is something that the Fairgrounds Commission has talked about for at least a couple of years since I've been here. A second estimate was received from Stage Drop LLC, Fork River, New Jersey, at a total cost of $78,266.47.
Wishes of the board?
I will make a motion to approve. I'll give reasons when we're done.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Wright. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Chaska. Discussion. Go ahead, Commissioner Wright.
Yeah, just to add, I mean, it's as these very aged stages are reaching their end of life, there's a safety concern that goes with that as well as their ability to just be moved and function well, so.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Can you tell us where they're gonna be located? Where these two stages will,
They can be located anywhere. They're very
Okay.
portable, yeah. And they're, as Commissioner Wright mentioned, they're much easier to set up than the current ones. The one probably takes half a day with 4 or 5 individuals screwing pieces together and everything. These are, I mean, you can flip them up, put the legs in, put them back down, connect them, and I mean, be done in a couple hours with maybe just 2 people. So, yeah, they're portable. They can be used all over the grounds.
and you'll get those carts, the deck and rail carts and that sort of thing to transport them around?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Chaska. Is there any value to the old stage, John? Or what's gonna happen
The
there?
one, probably not. It's been assembled and disassembled so many times that one probably, the smaller one, we have a 12 by 24, that's a little smaller. That one could still be used in some circumstances. The issue that we often run into with a lot of the things that we have out there is storage. So if we can find a place to store, we might keep the smaller one, but the larger one likely won't be used anymore.
Please justify the reuse of it. Don't find a good place for storage and we'll fight it in 5 years.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
So, no, I mean, and that is, I'm that same way, but I mean, we might as well do something with it if there's no use for it. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Okay, we'll go back to economic development and Liz. Morning, Liz. Good morning, Luke.
Morning. Luke Greiner is here with us today. Luke is a labor market analyst with Minnesota's Department of Employment and Economic Development. And he's here today to give us an update and overview of McLeod County's economic trends.
Thank you, Liz. Excellent. Morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Like Liz mentioned, I'm a labor market analyst. I cover central and southwest Minnesota. So McLeod County is kind of right in the middle of my area. And if any of you have questions about this or other topics, I am a resource available for you. So even referrals, if there's businesses that you're working with, municipalities, churches, I mean, school districts, it doesn't really matter. I'm here to serve, so please keep that in mind. This morning, I'm just going to be going over some of the more recent highlights. We're going to start out looking at the state. You can kind of have local data and you can have recent data, but it's nearly impossible to get recent local data. So we're going to start out at the state. I kind of like to use that as a proxy to have some context, what's going on potentially locally. And then we're going to dive down into McLeod County, and I'm going to cover some of the things that I think should be on folks' radar, particularly policymakers and influencers such as yourselves. If you have any questions, feel free to stop me, and I'll do my best to answer or avoid your question. All right. So we do have December data now. This is statewide information. So just to give you kind of the skinny on the actual information without any sort of headline news or anything like that, our unemployment rate is continuing to tick up. It ticked up about 1/10 of a point in December. This has been going on for over a year now. Our unemployment rate kind of bottomed out in 23, in the beginnings of 24, and it's been increasing since the middle of 2024. So we're at 4% roughly. Let me go up a little bit. It's a little bit lower than it is nationally, where it's 4.5%. And if you were to think back to, say, the 80s, 90s, that would still be considered a relatively low unemployment rate. It'd be considered very low compared to what we had during the Great Recession. But it's shifting upwards after really bottoming out in between the pandemic recession and the Great Recession, that really long stretch of economic expansion. So it's loosening, and that's something to be aware of. It's still relatively low, but we're getting more slack in the labor market. And it's starting to pull more people into the labor force. We see that much more common in rural areas. So outside of the Twin Cities, you kind of have people reacting to a changing economy in very different ways. And I think it's probably because there's more one-earner households in rural places compared to, say, the Twin Cities, where you have a lot more two-earner households. Because people will jump into the labor force when things are getting uneasy in our area, whereas in the Twin Cities, people will jump out of the labor force when things get uneasy. It's kind of an odd but different dynamic. Across our economy in the state, we saw some pretty decent growth in manufacturing in 2025. Over the year from December to December, it grew here, almost 2%. It's down in the nation, but information and financial activities, those have been weak spots for over a year now. They've just been continually shedding jobs. So over the year, there is a decent amount of job loss. Information, by the way, that would be like the dissemination of information. So publishing, newspaper, like all that would fall under there. Not necessarily like IT. Some people think of it as IT. It's not typically that.
Mr. Chair, question for Luke.
Sir.
Luke, as people are job searching, and it kind of seems like, you know, our printed newspapers are starting to become fewer and fewer, how do job seekers access information on looking for future employers?
Ideally there'd be one place where employers could post job openings and one place where job seekers would look. That would be probably an optimal matchmaking situation, but there isn't. The state is required, every state is required by federal government to maintain a labor market exchange. So ours is called Minnesota Works. To be honest, it's been underinvested in for many, many years. It looks like something that you would expect to see maybe in the 90s or 2000s. It's finally getting revamped, but there's also, you have Indeed, a lot of local, regional labor market pages that are posting, and then companies, individual companies themselves will post their openings. So it kind of paints a picture of it's not easy as a job seeker to find the match. And that is somewhat unnecessary friction, where that matchmaking is just challenging. It's unfortunate because you hear employers say we can't find workers and job seekers say we can't find jobs. And I'll talk a little bit about how that whole experience is degrading, and it's probably, and it's not in a healthy way. That's a really important question, because people like me might come, say 5 years ago, say in 2018, I'd come here and I would tell you about the amazing labor market we have, best labor market to look for a job in all of our lifetimes, plus our grandparents, forever, virtually, in modern economy. And then, I could talk to people looking for work that are highly qualified, that don't have like significant barriers. They might not have like a personality disorder. They're like just an able-bodied, well-skilled individual that can't find a job. And that's frustrating. It's discouraging to our most well-qualified people when they read the headlines that says that anybody that wants a job already has a job, and if they got laid off, they're struggling to find a job. So that matchmaking, it's not good. It's not a good outcome for people in general and businesses. So, I'll get to that though.
If I could just add on to that and let you comment. We have Minnesota Jobs and Training.
Yep, CMJTS.
And we also have, we stick money in libraries.
Yep.
And the computers are in libraries. Shameless plug for doing that, but that is available, and some people don't realize that, but that is another way to get at the internet.
Yes, absolutely. So there's a career force location in Hutchinson that CMJTS and my department kind of cooperate out of Ridgewater. So that's an excellent place where somebody can kind of direct you and help you find those job postings. But unfortunately, unless you're laid off and you're given that as a resource or even required to go there, maybe through unemployment insurance, the general public might not know about it. That's my perception of working. I actually used to work in Hutch at that place, and it's a phenomenal resource for everybody that knows about it, businesses and job seekers, but that's a subset of everybody that we have. If somebody gets laid off, or let's say they just can't do their job anymore or something like that, and they don't get unemployment insurance in Glencoe here, what are the odds they know that that place exists and there's people able and willing to help them? It's like a lot of resources. They're there, but
the libraries, they can go
Yeah.
at their own speed and their own time. Being we fund libraries, I just like to, plug that whenever I can. It is a resource that's probably underused. I'm not sure.
Yep. Libraries, yeah, they get leveraged a decent amount even for, like resume prep, things that you'd have to do online.
Thank you.
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Chair?
Go
And
ahead.
then Luke, just, and I was kind of going the same direction as Commissioner Kruger on how we can coordinate, you know, these job seekers. He mentioned Central Minnesota Jobs and Training is one. How about agencies like UCAP, where they're, you know, they have a population coming in looking for help? Are they able to, or do they participate with referrals on trying to get people a job?
Yeah, it's my understanding that those organizations are pretty well coordinated, and usually they're, like, in many instances, a client might be accessing services from multiple organizations, and like CMJTS, they really specialize on that employment piece, and also some of the training, and, you know, where people might have a deficit in their training, so it's my opinion that they actually work, they function really well together, kind of as this internal, between adult basic ed and organizations like UCAP. You kind of have this network of nonprofits that specialize, you know, which is a good thing in my opinion. But I think the coordination is probably pretty well done. Again, you kind of run into that same system though. It works okay for those people because they get plugged into that network and they're referred, but you know, there's still a lot of people that they maybe have too high of income or they don't qualify for the programs. You know, there's still people that don't know about it. So I always appeal to the general public commissioners, you know, use your spheres of influence to make sure that the employers in the area know about these resources, and your school district, you know, just the more known it is, the better it'll be utilized, which is good for our communities in general.
Very good, thank you.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you, Luke. Is there I just thought of another question. Is there, you know, like 4.1 or 4.5 rate, is there in between bottom number, I mean, is there a percentage, 1 or 2% that'll never be filled? That, I mean, do you start with a base number? I know it's probably nothing to really talk about, but is there a base number there?
So for years, the Fed, which sets our monetary policy, you know, they have a dual mandate, the Federal Reserve. One is to maintain stable prices, which would be controlling inflation, and the other mandate would be full employment, defined as where everybody that wants a job has a job. Now, my whole life up until, say, 2016 or 2015 or so, it's like an arbitrary number, but generally it was widely accepted by economists across our country and policymakers that it was typically like 4 or 5%. They considered if you're somewhere around 5 or somewhere around a little north of 4, that would be full employment. You never want to get to 0% unemployment because there's two important types of unemployment. One is structural, and that is what we saw in the Great Recession. We had the manufacturers and construction industries laying off people. There's a structure in our economy that was broken, and it was causing massive amounts of unemployment. That's bad. But then you have frictional unemployment, and that's unemployment from people moving to Glencoe, to Winthrop, and they might be unemployed during the move, right? They might have taken some time off. They might have taken off time to rear their kids or go in and out of retirement. That's good unemployment. That's kind of self-choice. And you need to have that friction to allow some slack in the labor market for businesses to hire. Because if you got to 0%, there would be no person to hire anywhere. And that's not necessarily good. What we've seen, you know, in some counties, we were below 2%, like in 2022 and 2023, it got ultra low. You know, what we thought was low in 2018 and 2019 became almost laughably high following kind of the surge of hiring after the pandemic. And I would say that was just not sustainable. I mean, it was not an ideal situation. There was just not enough slack in the labor market. So where we're at now, I would say it's statistically, like it's a pretty decent, like that's a fine rate, but the way you feel about it is different because it's increasing and it's not decreasing. Even if it was just holding steady, you know, there's just a lot of uncertainty, and I just think you can kind of tell people are a little less easy about 4% when it's rising versus 4% when it's continuing to decrease. Just kind of the trajectory that it's going. We also, kind of another thing that I think is important, we're trying to piece together what pieces of data we have to figure out, how the strength of our economy is. One metric that I like to look at is what's happening with private sector wages. So if wage growth is growing faster than inflation, that would suggest that it's a pretty healthy economy. There's still not so much surplus labor, so employers are raising their wages. And over the midterm, wages are up. If you compare wages from 2019 to our most recent data, they've exceeded inflation by like 4 or 5 points. And in the last year, they've still exceeded it, even though they're kind of coming to parity. So that also suggests a relatively strong labor market. Most of our metropolitan statistical areas have been doing really well, except for St. Cloud. That has struggled now for quite some time. And this picture here paints maybe how our labor market's changed over time. So here, the blue bars, that would be the number of people that are unemployed in central Minnesota. So this is like 13 counties from Renville all the way up to Pine, but it does not include metro counties. Sherburne and Wright would be the most metropolitan, but McLeod's smack right in the middle of it. The red line, that's job openings that we track through a survey. And then the black dot is the ratio of unemployed workers to job openings. And I'll show you, it's 2024. We don't have our 25 data published yet. But as of 2024, there was a little less than one person that was unemployed for every job opening that we had. So if that is accurate, you wouldn't actually be able to fill every single job opening we have, even at 0% unemployment. It got really low in 22. You can see we're about a half a person. But on the other end, if you think of back to the Great Recession, in this area, I think we're around 8, like 8 unemployed people for every job opening. And it's a dramatic shift, and it also is a challenge for businesses to adapt to, because their entire hiring process and model either works or it doesn't based on how much surplus labor you have. So it's just part of business, but it's kind of an elastic seesaw going back and forth between tight and loose. This is what our labor force looks like in McLeod County. Ups and downs. You can see we lost a lot of labor there in 2021 and 2022, and we're kind of climbing back out of that. We're basically a little bit on the net positive of where we were leading into the pandemic recession. That happened everywhere. Massive exodus of the labor force, primarily from people 55 plus, likely retiring, and some female workers with children under 5 also. Because at that same time, like we had childcare disruption, there's just a lot going on where it made it hard for a lot of those caretakers to maintain employment. This is what our labor force growth has done over time and what is expected to do in the future. So in the 90s, we had phenomenal labor force growth, 13% over that decade, and that is what we see everywhere. A lot of places much faster, but that's just really fast growth. Added a lot of workers. In the 2000s, no growth at all. So basically had the same amount of workers in 2010 as you had a decade prior. Then we had the 2010s. That was a little bit negative here. In a lot of places, that was actually positive. You had some decent growth so far this decade. And the models use your population, historical trends, your population projections, and we kind of extrapolate the prime working ages and people out of that. So we project about 2.5% growth in the workers in McLeod County over the next decade. That's nothing to celebrate, but I would say I would be relieved if I were you, because there's a lot of counties that have negative growth projections or maybe just anemic, like 0%. It's slow everywhere. That's just, we have labor force growth, it's just slow. So the thing that's probably important to think about it, and I think it's very important for folks like you, is I wouldn't plan, no matter what people are telling you, I wouldn't necessarily plan on how all of a sudden having a whole bunch of workers to do whatever projects people are talking about. I'm not saying that those projects won't happen. I just think it's important to keep in mind that we're a little bit constrained by our workers. And I would expect to have roughly the same amount of workers in 10 years as we have today. If that's helpful.
How does, I mean, the 2.5%, I mean, McLeod is a little stagnant in growth. So, I mean, that, to another county that grows in population, I mean, the 2.5% of what, you know? So, I mean, so it's not bad, really.
No, it's not, because your population can grow much faster, but of your whole population, if it's a lot of children under 16, they're not going to be in the labor force, you know, unless they're 8 years old or whatever, and they reach 16 in 8 years. And then you have all the people leaving the labor force that just attrition out through retirements and stuff like that. So everybody that's left in kind of that prime working years, that's what we look at. No, 2.5% is not bad growth. I don't think it's nothing like real optimistic, but it's also not bad news. It's just, I think it's good information to have.
Well, my point is if we'd have grown a lot by population and still only had that's a negative or a red flag, but.
Yeah, and there's a lot of counties that actually are in that boat. North of 94 in the cabin country, as there's an exodus out of the Twin Cities, a lot of them ended up in Cass County, Pine, you know, these really nice, attractive counties. A lot of them, they probably already had second homes and things like that. So their population grew quite large, but it doesn't translate to labor force growth, really. Their labor force growth doesn't reflect the population growth because the people that moved there weren't necessarily in the labor force, or they left the labor force.
How does data reflect people coming in from out of counties to fill the jobs that are here? I mean, are you able to track that, or does it show in these numbers? I mean, because of our location or where we are, I mean, some of our job market is being filled with people that drive an hour.
Absolutely, yes. We do. So there's a data tool. It's a data set that compares where people file their taxes against where their employer is paying them from, like the payroll codes. So you can see basically where people are commuting from, and you can compare how many people are coming into McLeod County for work versus how many live in McLeod County and are leaving, or how many work and live in McLeod County. And I'd have to look. I mean, I pull that information all the time, but it's definitely something I can get you. And you can look at it for specific municipalities or townships, or even do a radius. Because when you have a community right on the border of your county, how far is Glencoe from, would it be, what's the next county south? How far away are we from?
Well, Sibley is not so, it wasn't one of us, we're only a few miles from Sibley County line, but
Yeah.
from a workplace, it would be probably 20 miles, but more towards the metro is what I was thinking.
Sure,
You know,
yep.
your Carvers and Wright counties.
Yeah, so any of those communities on either side of the border impact that a lot. So if there's a community just outside of McLeod County and you have a lot of workers coming in or going out, you know, it kind of depends on where your businesses are and where your communities are, but there's always a lot of inflow. And to your point, I think a lot of people probably underestimate or discount the amount of people moving around. And even though usually people are concerned about the amount of people leaving, what gets missed is the huge amounts of people coming into your county to fill your jobs. Like, that is very, very important, particularly in your more rural areas. So if you have a city, you know, kind of like Glencoe, if there's no other major hubs to work at, you're pulling a lot of outside of the county residents in here to fill jobs and go back home at the end of the day. That's
It's not
really important.
scientific, but if I drive around, whether it's Hutchinson, even Glencoe or Winstead, there's a lot more cars. I don't know where the people, where the
Yeah.
people are coming from. I'd like to hope they were here, but I know they're not all here, so.
Yeah, and I can pull that and you can see where they live, what towns.
What about home workers? I mean, I know there's a lot of, especially spouses that are, how do you track that data, or is that not trackable, really?
It depends on what they do. So if you're like a stay-at-home parent, and if you're not being paid, let's say it's different if you're staying at home and you're taking care of a parent and you're being paid like through Social Security or Medicaid or something, or Medicare to take care of them, or Social Security if you have a disabled son or daughter, something like that. Those situations are different because you're receiving a paycheck. If you're just a stay-at-home spouse, I shouldn't say just, because it's a lot of work to maintain a household, but if you're not employed, yeah, you don't really show up. You would be part of the population, not part of the labor force. To be a part of the labor force, according to the data, you have to either be working or you have to be actively looking for work if you're unemployed. So if I quit my job and my wife continued to work and I was not looking for work, I would not be unemployed. I would just be a part of the civilian population.
Maybe I shouldn't have phrased it that way with a spouse, but I mean, I know of a number, I don't know how the number would reflect a percentage, but that work from home with what I would call super good jobs. I mean, that's the way they were hired. 3M has a bunch.
Yeah.
I mean, they have never went to work. They were hired for the purpose of working from home. And and that gets into the internet discussion, and that's why I brought it up, just to tie the two together, so.
Yes, that, it was, it's scaled back since 2020, but it is still, in Minnesota in general, we have a much higher share than our surrounding states of people that work from home. And I think it helps probably because we have a lot of multinational corporations here. So you're kind of plugged into a network of the global economy, maybe a little bit easier than, say, South Dakota or North Dakota. We have a larger presence of global companies, so. Yeah, and that data is also available, the share that work from home. What we can't necessarily distinguish very well is whether you're, like you own a roofing company and you're technically based out of your home, or you farm out of your home, or if you're working for 3M out of your home, or a company in Dubai out of your home. We just know that they're working out of their home. Yeah, it's a shortfall. You guys have excellent questions. I do appreciate them. I would talk here all day, so don't. It's not going to hinder me unless you're meeting.
The reason being is I'm an advocate to find a way to get some growth, in McLeod County.
I'll get to that. I have an idea. It's not a great one. Don't get excited. I have lots of ideas. Most of them are not worth repeating, but. So anyways, we're going to kind of keep going through our journey of the data here. This chart shows you job openings over time. For central Minnesota, that's the blue line is job openings. So you can see it bottoming out in the Great Recession. The start line, by the way, it starts in 2001 and goes all the way to 2024. And you'll see how these things just skyrocketed in the last few years. And even though it's come down a lot, we still have a tremendous amount of job openings. The orange dots are the median wage offers. So that is the advertised wage across all occupations of what employers are hoping to start people at. And then the green dot is inflation adjusted all the way back to 2001. So you can see how the last half a decade here, those orange dots really went up fast. That's employers increasing their wages for starting. And the green dots went up a tiny bit. That is purchasing power fully eroded from inflation. So employers paid, they increased at rates we've never seen before, but it really didn't translate to better wages for workers. And a lot of the wage growth during that period was for onboarding new workers and kind of trying to stockpile new recruits. And the wage growth didn't necessarily translate to the current workers. And that's kind of shifted also. We produce the cost of living estimates for the state, and we produce this by every region and county. So the typical family in Minnesota is 2 adults and 1 child. That's kind of the composition. The work hours comes out to roughly 1 person working full-time and 1 person working part-time. So for that family dynamic in McLeod County, they'd have to earn about $61,000 a year combined in order to meet their needs. And this isn't what people actually spend. This is what they would need to spend in order to live what we consider a safe and healthy lifestyle. So if you need 3 apples for lunch, that is the price included of the 3 apples that you need, not the 1 apple you maybe bought because you didn't have enough money. So each adult would have to earn about $19.50 an hour The childcare, and then there's 7 monthly cost categories there. Childcare costs, I always like to point out, because I'm a childcare paying customer, that is part-time rate, what's reflected there, so part-time per month, and it's weighted towards the type of care you have. So if you primarily have in-home care, it's going to be much cheaper than what you would pay at a center. But if your county has much more center-based care, then it's going to be weighted towards their cost structures, because in-home is cheaper than center-based care typically. So that'd be a part-time rate weighted to the type of care you have, and then you have your monthly food, healthcare, housing. And the housing cost, I should also say, is not a mortgage. That is at the 40th percentile of rental rates in McLeod County. And that also doesn't mean there's anything to rent at the 40th percentile or anything available. It just is what those people that are paying at the 40th percentile are paying. That would be for a 2-bedroom apartment. So that's that. Taxes obviously has to run through there. And other includes things like clothes, school supplies, does not include any entertainment, retirement, emergency savings. Those are all considered luxuries. And then you can also see what it costs for a single person, about $31,000 a year to meet their, to buy a 1-bedroom apartment, or to rent a 1-bedroom apartment at the 40th percentile. And this is not necessarily to be used as, say, a policy tool for minimum wage recommendations or anything like this. This is really just to help understand what type of wages it takes to live, and then to think through what type of wages people earn in different types of occupations and stuff like that. So that leads me to this next slide. It's a little bit small to see. These slides will be available too. This chart shows you the type of occupations we have in central Minnesota and the median wage paid at each of these different occupations. So the most common type of occupation is at the top there, that's sales and related occupations, and the median wage in that is about $16 an hour. And then food prep and serving related, that'd be like your fast food workers and things like that. Median wage about $15 an hour. So if you remember back up here, for a single person, they'd have to make a little less than $15 an hour. And then it's also kind of reflecting what you would need to earn to be off of the major social welfare programs to be just independent and sustainable. I'm not going to go through all these, but I think it can be kind of a helpful reference as you're thinking about your own economy or any economic development projects that might come up. What type of jobs do we want to promote, things like that. And then this takes us to employment trends. So these lines represent the number of jobs. So we track jobs through unemployment insurance payroll taxes. So each quarter, businesses have to report this, and we just scrape the tax records, and we get to publish this so long as we're not disclosing any private employers. The top blue line there, that is employment. So that's the amount of jobs in McLeod County over the last 25 years or so. I think it goes back to 2000, maybe 2001. So you can see it kind of went down after the dot-com recession at the very beginning, rode up, and then you had the Great Recession. That actually impacted McLeod County a lot. That was pretty devastating for here because we're kind of a manufacturing hub, and manufacturing and construction they were hit hard. The recovery, you can see it was slow, not very linear, but it was slowly recovering, and then you had kind of a slowdown leading up to the pandemic recession, and then the pandemic recession itself. And you can see kind of how that shakes out throughout your economy. Here, let me scroll down to try to split those screens. Here, at the top in orange, that's your good producing domains. So that'd be mining, which in this area is like gravel pits, but primarily manufacturing and construction. Ag would also fall into there. Not food manufacturing would fall into there, but also the ag production, like the rearing of the animals. And then the bottom in blue, that's service. So that's everything else. Education, hospitality, healthcare, those are like your big ones, food. So that sector's actually done quite well. It's that goods producing sector that's struggled. The other thing to keep in mind is this is a single measure of jobs. What has happened over this period too is there's been a lot of disruption in manufacturing, which has led to leaner manufacturing processes, not necessarily lower output. And that's something when you talk with a group of manufacturers and I show them how manufacturing employment has declined for decades now, they're like, well, we're making more now than we ever have, and that's kind of the point too. Manufacturing is an oddball because as you automate, as you find more improved processes, you can do more with less people. So it's not necessarily an indicator of health of that sector. It can be, but it shouldn't be taken at face value. This is manufacturing specifically, just because it is such a dominant player in the area. And I'm not going to go through these, but on the labels there you can see the different types of manufacturing and how they're different. So some manufacturing has really grown well and some has not. So when you say manufacturing has shrunk a lot, it also is nuanced. Not all manufacturing here has declined. There's components of manufacturing that has been adding jobs like crazy. So this leads us to students. So when I talked about like a potential solution, I'm not talking about a silver bullet. I'm talking about potentially making a difference in the margins, which I think is an honest assessment of what is even capable or possible. Minnesota is not necessarily a net winner when it comes to people. We export a lot, particularly college-age students, leave for college, and on the net basis, we just lose them. That's like the primary core group that contributes to a lot of our losses in population. And most of our workers every year, if you want to like pinpoint where do our workers, new workers come from, they're not coming from other counties, they're not coming from other states, they're not coming from other countries, they're coming from our high schools. So they probably have for most decades, but it's more important now because we do have that slowing labor force growth. We have businesses that want to expand, and if we want to keep our businesses in our communities or potentially even attract new ones here, you're gonna have to make a case that you have new workers being minted at your local high schools that are worth hiring, right? That, I've seen that come up with conversations with site selectors and corporations from across the world that are looking to locate to Minnesota, and I get pulled in on those projects. It is more and more clear that they are very interested in how close the partnerships are between our schools and our business community. So, students matter a lot. And this is an article, there's some research that I'm just gonna cruise through, but there's a link to this article where you can kind of see what students think. So I have been conducting this student survey in Southwest and Central Minnesota for over a decade now, and I've actually now kind of formalized it so that way you can pinpoint like Glencoe or Hutchinson or your school districts and actually see what those students think about their own community, what they want to do for jobs and stuff like that. I did try to look. There are currently apparently no results for the students of McLeod County, so if you do know somebody at a school district, send them, there's just a QR code, it takes about 6 minutes. But statewide, we've got like 5,000 students this year that have done the survey since the start of the school year. And then I can report and share that back to your local school districts, your local communities, and it helps all of us think about what our students think about us, which is really, really important, particularly since they're the next generation of leaders, business owners. The succession goes on to them. I've seen a lot of initiatives try to attract people, and I'm not saying that's without merit. I've just not seen any of those initiatives really actually work in a meaningful way. Compared to students that are a captive audience, they have attachments and connections here. I think it makes sense to prioritize them versus discard them that are already here and try to reach for somebody else that has connections somewhere else. So one of the questions I ask is, what type of job are you most interested in? The reason this is of particular importance is because there is a huge mismatch and a gap in what students are interested in and what jobs we actually have. So a lot of this goes to even career exploration. Obviously, everybody's aware of the Hutchinson Tiger Path. That is an outlier across probably the upper Midwest for sure, certainly Minnesota, as far as the integration between kind of the world of work and education. But a lot of districts don't have the resources or haven't moved on this. But a lot of districts are kind of moving in this direction to help students understand what does our economy even look like? You know, people can't all be influencers. That's just not what we need, and that's not what we have. But what you'll see here is in green, the share of employment compared to the share of students that are interested in working in that sector. So look, manufacturing, and we combined it with STEM because there's a ton of money thrown at STEM to promote STEM, particularly to females. But it's still lagging by a lot. And if you break out manufacturing, it's like 1% of students. I think the most I've ever seen is 3% of students at any district is interested in manufacturing. Despite, in most of those communities, manufacturing is their largest employing sector and has higher than typical wages, but kids just aren't interested in it. That's why it's so important that economic development is intertwined with community development and education, because one part of this is helping students understand what we have available, right? And that they're good jobs and things like that. The other part is to help change the narrative that it's worth sticking around. Like, you can. You're not a loser if you stay in Glencoe. You can be highly successful, and it's not a bad thing to stay in your own hometown. Convincing kids that they should leave and then complaining that our kids have left, I don't think is a real sustainable strategy, but we've been doing it for generations. And I'm not saying we should prevent kids from leaving, but I'll kind of get to why maybe we should rethink that.
Look, before you go forward, I have a question on,
Yes.
on the top of that slide, your largest section there, the health sciences and human services, is that broke down in any further detail at all?
We combined them. The taxonomy here, the categories, that's how students learn about it in school. So it's a little bit messy, but we try to then take the employment and put it in the same categories. We don't, I'll say this, I used to ask just healthcare, and it was typically like 20% of students would be interested in healthcare, an unbelievably close alignment to the share of jobs that we actually have. So for the healthcare employers, I'd say you've already won. Like, kids are interested in your sector more than any other sector, and they have for 12, 13 years that I've been doing this. But they probably don't know all the different types of occupations within healthcare. They probably know of the direct care. They don't know of all the back office support and admin and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. One significant shift we've seen is in what students plan to do after high school. So in 2017, and this is from the Southwest Career Expo, this kind of butts up to McLeod County, but it'd be southwest of here. I don't think the kids are really any different, because I've asked this question all over the state. So in 2017, 61% of students plan to go to a university. By 2024, that had dropped to 49%. So far this year, it's like 51%, but a significantly smaller share plan on going to a university. In our area, about 60%, 64, 65% of our jobs don't require anything beyond a high school diploma, by the way. And then a much larger shift, if you look in the gray, is the share that was 4%, it grew fourfold, who plan to just get a job out of high school and not go on to higher education. And a much higher share plan on going into a two-year school. I would say what's beneficial about the shift is it's getting closer aligned with what they actually end up doing. So when I ask, these are 10th graders also, when I ask what they plan on doing and then I look at what they ended up doing, a much smaller share end up going to university, a much higher share end up going to a two-year school, and a way higher share end up joining the labor force right out of high school. Which then begs the question, in any community you might have 20 to 35% of your students that join the labor force right out of high school. What are they prepared for? Because if their high school experience was really to gear them to go to college and a quarter to a third don't do that, was that a valuable experience, the high school experience at all? Do they know the value of the high school experience if they think it's preparing them for something they're not interested in doing? Right? That is important because we need them to try hard in high school. High school, bar none, is the best educational investment these kids will ever get. But I don't know if we have time, but like, I didn't take a lot of my classes serious in high school because I didn't see the value of it. I was just a simple farm boy. So learning how to type, I thought was a waste of time. I played Oregon Trail instead. There's a little video game. I tried to make it to the Rocky Mountains and killed grizzly bears. I'm still not a strong typer, but I was confident that I was going to farm. My family was doing relatively well farming, and we didn't need a computer. So I didn't see any value in it. I'm not a farmer. I write publications, official memos. I could tremendously benefit if I would have taken those classes seriously and actually connected the dots. And as shallow as it may be, I think it's useful to understand that students care about money. I've asked every which way. You can call it a shallow measure. It is the most important part of a job until that need is met. And I think it's important for students to understand that if they master a lot of these skills in high school, you know, how to handle a situation where somebody's losing their mind or have a disagreement with a superior, like a teacher, how to show up on time, turn in your assignments, all those sorts of things, we call them value-added skills because they add value to that person. Value meaning you can command a higher wage in the real-world workplace. But we don't do a good job spoon-feeding this to our kids and connecting the dots. And I asked questions this year, actually. One of my new questions is, what do you think high school is preparing you for? And it's very different depending on the type of school you go to. This slide I like to highlight to our businesses. This is asking, which of the following statements best describes your approach to career exploration? So this would be career exploration, if you want to simplify it, is how they find out about the businesses in our backyard and the careers that they have. So 40%, these are 10th graders, only explore careers that they're already interested in. How many careers, how many occupations do you think a 10th grader or an 11th grader could name off? They probably know of the ones that they use, right? So it could be the doctors, retailers, and what their parents and family members do. And then all the other, we codify over 800 different occupations in Minnesota. Like we have a tremendous variety. They exist in every community, but a lot of them are not visible. You do not know about those occupations unless you're me or you're just really curious, I guess. But only 13% are seeking out that information. So for our local organizations, our local government, like how many students, and I read, I think on the agenda that there's like a student day coming up. It's phenomenal. Hopefully, more students than just the ones that get invited learn about local government too, because we don't do a great job of recruiting people to do this, to be in our schools even though our students are there. But if we wait for students to figure out what we have, it looks to me like we'll maybe get 13%. And the rest of the students, they've saw something somewhere and that's what they're looking up. And this slide I think is maybe most important. Where do you want to live? So I asked this question to students in the most rural places of Minnesota. The western edge of Minnesota is just the most rural, for the most part. I would say it has some of the least amount of amenities that we would talk about that attract students, right? Here's one of the furthest places away from the Twin Cities, the bright lights, but like 70% want to stay rural, either in their own hometown, near their own hometown, or a rural place somewhere else. So if in our most rural places, students are probably had a good enough experience where they would choose to do that again, what do the students think in Glencoe or Hutchinson? I bet you there's a larger share that want to stay in your own area than a lot of people believe. The reason that this is so important is because there are companies and organizations that don't see the value in investing in these students because they just think they're going to leave anyways, because a lot of students still do. My question would be, what are we doing to make it easy to stay? And I always say this is just kind of my soapbox thing. When you go to a high school graduation, what is the one question everybody asks that student that's just recently graduated, right, before you've drank the punch and got a sandwich?
Where are you going to college?
Where are you going? You instantly, and it's hard not to, but you frame it and insinuate that that person must leave, right? It's a terrible question. I always like to try to leave this bit with, instead of saying that, ask them what they want to be. Because it doesn't matter if they're a veterinarian in Glencoe or Fargo. They're doing what they want to do. But implying that they must leave Because what about the students that actually maybe have a good job locally and they don't plan on leaving? They're going to tell 80, 90 people that night that say, where are you going? And you say, nowhere. That kind of sounds like a loser. And that's not right. So we also need to think about how we even frame that. We highlight successes that leave and maybe go on to fail without highlighting the folks that succeed locally. I have a whole bunch of other information. I feel like I've used more time than I should have. I don't know where we're at.
I haven't heard anybody complaining, but
No, keep going.
All right. So, as far as the solutions, again, on the margins, the way I see economic development is addressing the labor force specifically is I take myself as an example. I floundered through higher education. Luckily, I didn't have to pay for it. I had the GI Bill to pay my way. However, it still cost me a lot in terms of time that I changed majors, changed colleges. It was just a lot of misadventures, I'll say. But I'm not unique. I'm a very average, normal person, and a lot of students do what I did. And that's not good for the students, because the longer they're trying to figure out what they want to do after high school, the more, like, their time is worth more. There's an opportunity cost there. And it's also not good for our businesses, because if it takes a student an extra 6 months or a year to figure out what they want to do and actually become successful at that company, what if they got there 6 months sooner? That's real labor force growth. That's an employer getting to hire those people sooner, and those students, those graduates, gaining meaningful work sooner. Like, that is what we can do, and it's not a silver bullet, but it's on the margins, because we don't have the surplus labor to allow our students to leave our high school and then flounder, because they didn't have the opportunity in high school to explore the world of work. Like, that I truly believe is one area where we can do something about it for a few reasons. One, you control it. Your local school boards, you don't have to do with a nightmare labyrinth bureaucracy like the state and federal government. You don't have to worry about that. You can control it at your local level. And I've seen school districts revamp how they approach this in a year. You know, like in 2 years' time, the whole programming at the school looks nothing like it used to. So it's something you can actually do something about, and you don't really have to ask for permission. So that's why I see it as something worth doing.
I have a question, and I don't know where it fits, but thing I've noticed with being I have grandkids now in all parts of this high school, into college and out in the workforce, in this, I'll call it a politically correct world, but why do they sometimes let kids go into areas that there won't be any jobs by the time they're done? I mean, they don't even try to steer them or objectively say, well, this is all right, but you aren't going to, I mean, they spend 4 or 5 years in college.
Yeah,
and
that's
they
an
say,
area that
"Oh,
I work
there's
a lot
no
on.
work." Well, I could have told them that before they went, but it's not right. You know, and I may be wrong too, so I don't know.
Since I assume this is being recorded, I will say that there's not a real strong feedback loop. That's one of the problems. So by the time a student goes through, say, college to get a degree that they thought they would be able to use and find out that an employer is not going to pay them extra for that, and they'll make the same amount as their high school peers that never went to college, the money's already been spent. The feedback loop is after the experience, right? So it's a long feedback loop. And then secondly, there's not much of an incentive from the education side, plus barriers to prevent that from happening, you know? So
Well,
if you,
some of them you can, I mean, there's a crossover you can use
yes,
in other fields, so it's not a total waste, but in some, they're pretty well, I'm dealing with a granddaughter right now, it's taped, I know, but, I mean, it's focused on something that, you know, to gain what she wants,
yeah.
is gonna take, the field is so full, I mean, I don't know, maybe she's lucky, but.
Yep, and that, luck isn't like a great strategy. And your granddaughter probably didn't leverage her parents' retirement, but there's a lot of people in those situations where they got one shot. You know, you're capped at the amount that you can borrow. Again, that's borrowing, but you're capped through federal like FAFSA, how much you can borrow over a lifetime. So if you borrow for the wrong thing, you can't always just borrow more and go for the right thing. We publish a number of tools that I would say we've tried, I shouldn't say unsuccessfully. We have amazing visual dashboards to answer what is the return on this educational investment, to the point where you can pick the individual college and the major, and you can see how much graduates from that, with that major, earn over like a decade. Like every year you can see their wages.
And let me
It's-
clarify, this is something she really wants to do, now that
Yeah.
I've painted myself in the corner. But I
Well,
mean,
and that's,
she really wants, I mean, and I'm using her for an example, but it's one I know.
Yep, so my approach when I'm talking with a group of students, for instance, I think the best way to make a good amount of money is to figure out what you're good at, what you're passionate about, and then try to figure out how you can leverage that in the economy. Like, how can I align my passion and what I'm naturally gifted at with what employers would actually pay me to do? I think it's really important also for people to understand the return on the investment of education. So whatever it is that your granddaughter's super interested in, I wouldn't tell somebody, do not go into this program because you're gonna make poverty-style wages for a decade. But I do think it's important that they understand the type of wages and how much it costs to live, and let them make that decision. Because for some people, you know, being the classical starving artists, that's okay for them. But it should also inform their borrowing attitudes getting into it. So maybe they work full-time through college instead of borrowing, like their friend that's going to school for civil engineering. You know, like, you can set yourself up to be a little bit more responsible in order to be sustainable with a lower wage. Or maybe you just decide, after understanding that maybe I have a few different things I'm passionate about and one just happens to pay really good, maybe this one's just better relegated to a hobby. Or something you do after you've kind of made yourself, you know? Yeah, that's...
Well, it's not just wages, I mean, you made a comment before that was a lot like me. I was gonna be a farmer, like you said you were gonna be. Who was gonna talk you out of it at that time? I mean,
My dad talked me out of it, but...
my point is, you know, if you got your mind set, you know, you don't like to take away people's dreams either.
No, but those dreams should have a
Reality.
healthy dose of reality, yes, exactly.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. So the last two things I wanted to share are two new surveys that we're doing. Twice a year, we're surveying job counselors, so they'd be like the folks that work for Central Minnesota Jobs and Training, that'll work with people that are unemployed, also nonprofit partners, my own department, and we're asking them, what is the experience of your job seekers? So instead of asking job seekers specifically, which is really problematic, we're asking the people that work with a whole group of job seekers. So we ask them twice a year a battery of questions to try to understand, what is it actually like to be looking for a job? What direction is our economy maybe shifting, because our data does have some leg to it? So that's one of these surveys. The other survey, and I should have asked Liz if you did you get this survey? Okay. Yeah, so there's another survey, we just did it in December. We need to build like a better list. It's gonna be economic developers, or it is, business development professionals, it could be chamber folks, people that work with businesses, and asking them, kind of a companion type survey, what is it like for job seekers to get a job, and what is it like for employers to hire somebody, to help kind of fill some of our gap in information. So it's qualitative, it's non-scientific, but so far has been incredibly rich as far as information. I like to throw this out to anybody. If you have an idea for a survey question we should ask, just email me. Otherwise, we're kind of coming up with it on our own. But sometimes folks will give excellent recommendations. So one of the questions, this is from December here, or January. I can't remember now. But this is for the job counselors, and there's like roughly 300 job counselors that responded across the state. On average, compared to a year ago, how would you rate the ease with which your job-seeking clients are finding employment? If we scroll down, that's a little. In our area, About 40% said it's somewhat harder, 13% said much harder, a third said it's about the same, and you'll see some that said it's easier. The big difference in whether or not it's harder or easier is really depending on the type of occupations. This is really tiny. I'm not going to go over this a whole lot. Just explaining that what we're starting to see is a really like a bifurcation in occupations. So like in the Great Recession, it seemed like if you worked in manufacturing, didn't really matter what you did or what department in the Great Recession, it was going to be hard to get a job because manufacturers were just shedding jobs. Now, it doesn't seem like it's as closely tied to industry. It seems like it's much more closely related to what you actually do as a job. So we see creative professionals, IT, management, those people really struggling at getting. Those are also occupations that we know have a close interaction with AI. So those are kind of the things that we're trying to think through is how is this actually shaking out? And there's links on the last page where there's many more of these dashboards. You can actually select and compare your region to other regions and stuff like that. I only pulled out just 2 charts here, I think. So this is asking the folks that work with employers, so we'll get Liz on this too, but we want to hear from them because they get to summarize that experience, all the interactions they have with employers. How would you describe employers' outlook for the next 6 months? This would have been October, I believe we asked this. In our area, 54% said somewhat pessimistic, 30% said somewhat optimistic. So this kind of jives with the general sentiment of people looking for jobs and the sentiment of the employers. It's not doom and gloom for sure, but like, I would say a lot of uneasiness. There's a lot that are not necessarily super optimistic. And then we asked about their hiring. This one is really important. I think this is maybe going to be one of our most useful metrics out of this. 54% of employers said or of the folks that work with employers said it's somewhat easier to hire. This aligns with a lot of our data with the increasing unemployment rate, meaning that we have more surplus labor, making it easier for employers to hire. So it's kind of gaining that insight. And then if you are curious on AI and kind of what employers are doing with it or what you need to think about it, we specifically ask, are employers using it? If so, how? And we've been getting a lot of responses on this in some really interesting ways. And in the actual tool, you can scroll through and see the open-ended responses. We keep all the open-ended responses, whether it's regarding policy or regulations at the state. We keep it all unless it's laced with profanity. We haven't had that yet, so I think it's a really candid look into the business community and the folks that are looking for a job. The open-ended stuff I would recommend you just go through. I mean, it's just really, really rich. It's really interesting information. So I've used way too much of everyone's time. I do have an ask. What have the commissioners been hearing or seeing? Is there concerns in the area that are on your mind that maybe would help me think about things?
Questions for Luke?
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
I'll try one. Luke, we talked about job or people seeking jobs coming from a different county or exiting McLeod County. My district is Lester Prairie and Winsted.
Okay.
And I think there's quite a difference in the data that you track because of our proximity to, let's say, Carver or Wright County. I think we get a lot of people exiting our county to work in those our 2 neighboring counties. So I mean, when I looked at your data, I say yes, but hopefully there's a realization, that we kind of have a little bit of a vacuum going on in our McLeod numbers because of our proximity to Carver and
Yeah.
Wright.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really important dynamic to understand. And because I also cover Chisago and Izani County, Wright, like the fastest growing county. Some of these collar counties that skirt the Twin Cities, a lot of them, in my opinion, and I think a lot of people's opinions, they're really pretty nice places to live. They're close enough to access the Twin Cities. And even if you live in Winthrop and work in the Twin Cities, or let's say you live and work in Winthrop, being that close is kind of like a risk mitigation strategy. If I lose my job here, I'm close enough to the biggest labor market in the upper Midwest, you know? Those are good things to leverage. People probably make those decisions subconsciously, but that's a strength, you know? Help people realize that more, that we have great jobs here, and if we don't have great jobs here, we have great jobs just down the road. And there's a benefit of being a bedroom community also. Like, you have the workers, and you can play to those strengths to attract businesses. Just keeping in mind that sometimes people don't want to work in their backyard either, you know? That's why the place is pretty, is because it's not over-industrialized maybe, so some strategy is helpful.
Mr. Chair, my last question
Go ahead.
would be, or a comment that I can make. Living along Highway 7, we talked about, you know, people commuting in and out of McLeod County. I can tell you, just by observation, that 20 years ago, I would say if we had a rush hour,
Yeah.
it was heading to the east, into the metro. But I can tell you today, we have a rush hour that's going both directions. So dynamics are changing,
Yeah.
and the areas or places where we live kind of dictate, you know, what we see out here. Thank you for your presentation today.
Thank you.
Mr. Wright?
Yep, couple comments. So, where Nathan lives on the eastern side of the county, I'm on the western side. And I see the opposite effect to a degree, where in the morning and the afternoon, the cars coming and going from the west side. I mean, from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock in the afternoon, it's hard to get a tractor on the road, because I'm on a pretty steady artery of the traffic that's going back and forth. So there's a lot of traffic that comes from those western communities to come into McLeod County for
Yes.
employment. A couple of the data sets that you had up, and you know, last year you spoke at our economic forum along with Ben, and the information that you bring really helps us along with our, you know, initiative in economic development, and where does the county have a spot in those discussions. But the data and the information that you bring forth is always just amazing, and try to figure out how do we work with all that to put it into a plan here. When you put up the 2.5% growth, I mean, we could always ask for more, but at least I see that as a safe and not radical number.
Yes.
That's an attainable thing that we can work with. And our upcoming forum is going to work more with, you know, housing, and where does the county play or have a spot in that discussion. And when we look at that growth rate that is, you know, stable and good, you know, that tells us we don't need to make radical decisions, just decisions along that way. Your discussions got really interesting for me when you made the comment that in terms of our future workforce, where are they? They're sitting in our schools. And I was like 100% on board with that. And I felt that for a very long time. And I wrote down your line here, what can we do to keep students to stay? I'm going to run with that one. I think that was great. And I really appreciate how you were able to work that in with your data today. So.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll say, maybe leave you with this like tidbit. I had a colleague, she's moved on now, but she was looking at this large school district in the Twin Cities, and she thought it was an error for sure, because there's just a massive exodus of students after they graduated that'd go to Kansas State. And like, it was just, you know, students go everywhere, but like, this was just too big of an amount from, I think, the largest school district in the state. And it just didn't seem right, you know, so a lot of times if it looks like a duck but barks, you ask questions. So she called up I think it was the superintendent or the principal, and asked, like, this is what we're seeing, what, you know, is there any possibility that this is true? And he said, yeah, for sure, that's definitely true. And it was, when she asked what is going on, how come all your students are going to Kansas? And he said, well, we have a basketball coach that went there and had a great time. Tells a lot of people about his experience. That's one person in a large metropolitan school district. The amount of influence individuals have that discount what they say or they think it doesn't matter is massive. Parents matter. Like 64% of students say that their primary decision, like their primary influencer for career and education decision-making is their family. So how are their families talking about Glencoe or the largest employer in town? How are their teachers talking about their hometown? Or even talking about becoming a teacher themselves? You know, one person can export students, can help keep students, and that's something I try to bring up, but it's not like a common thread of conversation, is these influencers are everywhere, and we need to help them understand how they are shifting perceptions and actually changing what students do, even though they might be completely unaware.
Mr. Chair?
Lori?
My one comment is along Paul's line there too. I've been in my hometown. I've lived there my very short period of, that I've been around, those 40 years or so. I know Ryan's done the same, Michelle's done the same. What can we do, us, to help these students within McLeod County? Like how can we get involved? Do you have ideas, or do we just ask the superintendents? I mean, they're not gonna wanna sit and listen to me talk, or
I think
whatever,
they would.
but-
I mean, even talking about your experience staying, like, students probably think they know exactly what it's like to stick around home, and that's probably some of the allure of leaving. But they have no idea what it's like to leave. They only know what it's like as a kid, more or less. I mean, like I said, I probably have tons of bad ideas, but how many times do we lift up the people that stayed and became successful? Very rarely. You might talk at length about somebody that moved away and has some high-paying job somewhere else, but their life could be miserable. What if they have kids and no family around to help out? I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. I'm like, staying in my own hometown would have been kind of handy, you know? But you don't realize, because the feedback loop for me was 15 years. So I just think helping students understand that, yeah, these people, they never left, and they're the movers and shakers. Like, a lot of the benefits of being somewhere is the people that you know. And we see it in the data with the AI and feedback we get from staff. Who you know is becoming more important, not less important. You know, I think we've tried to use technology to get rid of that, and it's had the opposite effect. Because now we see employers having a hard time managing job applicants due to bots. They're like, they get so overloaded by bots and fake applications that they can't respond to the applicants. And then the applicants, they're saying, all these companies are saying they're hurting for workers, and I've applied at 30 places and I never hear back, right? It degrades that, and that's, I forgot to mention it, it degrades the whole experience. It makes everybody frustrated. So what matters most is that you know somebody. That's mattered a long time, and I think it probably always will matter. And where do you know more people than your own hometown? And particularly the kids that you have that are, their parents might be working a couple jobs, they might not be the movers and shakers, that 30% or so, 35% that used to be on free and reduced lunch, like sending those kids to some other hometown, like I think that's a really awful strategy, because they need to leverage their connections probably more than most, because they don't have the resources. So I think if more students were aware that, oh, yeah, actually there are really successful people here, Maybe I'm trying to think of my own memory, but you just never thought about those people. People would leave and you just assume they went on to do great things, even though they could be struggling in some other hometown. You never saw them struggle here because they were gone. But I think there's a ton of creative ways. I would, if you're looking at a strategy, just try to make sure that the local school districts understand how important they are to economic development, and the businesses understand what I kind of talked to you about. We need to be involved in our schools. It's just a win-win.
Any more questions for Lou? Just a comment, you're easy to listen to. I mean, people
Thanks.
that'll know, well, I've heard you before, and I think this is actually home for you too, not necessarily Glencoe, but this area, and I can relate to your comments because you're talking, lack of a better word, out of your heart, not out of, you know, the textbook. But, so I really appreciate that, and I just hope people realize this has never been always my cup of tea, but it's tied into economic development so much and our growth. And, you know, we could talk about this probably all day, and this is, I forgot for a while that we were still in a meeting, not in a workshop. But at any rate, it ties into, you know, housing, it ties into, you know, you said bedroom community, but it costs a lot to build that bedroom community because of the infrastructure, especially today. And that's what interests me in this and everything you do. There's so many aspects to this, but at any rate, thanks a lot for giving us your presentation today. It's been good, and I really appreciate it, and thanks, Liz, for getting it done. But again, I have to repeat myself, just listen to what he had to say, not so much in just exactly the content, but how broad it is to get, you know, growth, economic growth here. So we're short of housing and we're not growing. So I just as soon have some of them people that work from Carver and Wright County build a house over here.
Yes.
And
I appreciate your kind words. Thank you.
anything else for Luke?
Thank you.
Thanks, Luke. Liz, do you have anything before we move on? All right, I guess that moves us up to county administration, calendars. Since our last meeting, I've had a department head, meeting. I've had some transportation meetings with Trailblazer and with our regional transportation, and also talking with Andrew. I've had a couple of meetings on negotiations. I have Minnesota Development Corporation, our monthly meeting, and basically going, this time of the year, basically going through our budgets for finishing up from last year going into this year. County's CD 18 public hearing on the 30th, and Minnesota Rural Counties yesterday. It was pretty much just a administrative legislative update on the session opening up here in a couple of weeks. So it brings us to today. Commissioner Wright?
Yep, on the 21st, joint planning, Hutchinson Joint Planning meeting, and we did see that action item approved here today. As Commissioner Kruger mentioned, on the 30th, we did have CD 18, and I think we finally, after several years, found a conclusion as to that. This weekend, I attended the McLeod County Corn and Soybean Banquet. There's speakers and discussion there, just kind of related somewhat. I mean, we know that commodity markets are somewhat stale today, but there's a lot of hope for some future new uses and some expectations as some different things make their way through the process of making some new laws and so forth that are hopefully going to open things up for corn and soybean producers. Past farm business management instructor Paul Filzen was recognized as their friend of agriculture for the last year. Also want to make an announcement that if you go to our extension website, you can find applications there for our Farm Family of the Year. I do sit on the selection committee for that. We'll meet in March, so anybody who's interested in submitting the name of some local farm families that are doing great for their community, doing some extra things. We're always looking for new applicants on that to go through, and of course they get their time to be recognized here at the McLeod County Board meeting, and also at Farm Fest through the extension process of recognizing those individuals. So again, those applications are available on the McLeod County Extension website. That's it for me.
Commissioner Wright, got a quick question. Do discuss at all on E15 at the corn growers? Or, I mean, I guess that failed to get a.
Yep, it did, and there's discussion about what that would mean, for the corn producers and what the, soy diesel would mean for, you know, for the soybean growers as well. And some new uses as far as some, plastics being made with corn, and there's a lot of opportunity out there. We might not be able to, move a lot around the world like we wish we could, but there's a lot of things that we can be doing internally to really bolster that farm economy with uses. But the E15 was definitely brought up, so.
Thank you. Commissioner Smalls?
Yeah, thanks Commissioner Wright for your report. For me, on January 20th, we did have our regular board meeting here at the Government Center, followed by a workshop. And then that afternoon, I had a well-being committee meeting also. And then on Thursday, the 22nd, we had a union negotiations committee meeting here at the Government Center. And then last week, as Commissioner Kruger stated, we were here for the CD 18, County Ditch 18 public hearing. And then yesterday, I also did watch the Zoom meeting that MRC put on. Their guest speaker was Representative Mary Franzen. And she spoke about, what agenda may come forth in this session other than, the bonding that they're tasked with for this year. So that completes my report.
Thank you. Go ahead, Commissioner.
All right, after our last board meeting on Thursday, the 22nd, I had a Zoom meeting for UCAP. They don't do in-person meetings in the winter, so I appreciate that. The highlight of that meeting was their year-end stuff. The e-heat or the energy assistance was finally starting to roll out in December for the people that need help with their heating, so that was nice to see. And then there was an increase in the donations to the food shelf, which I'm guessing a lot of that came towards that last quarter of, the last quarter of 2025. I was able to attend a portion of Liz's roundtable at Ridgewater College on the 27th. I missed the first part of it, which was training on AI. So there's always going to be more for that to come. They say we're in about the 1% right now. So eventually we'll get to 100%, but it's going to be completely changing in the next years as we continue to develop that. On Thursday, the 28th, I attended our planning meeting with Mr. Ratzine, who, like you said, Nathan, you appreciate that he was there 3 times, him and his nephew, and they were very pleasant and enjoyable to talk to, so I'm glad this is finally done, but I feel like he was almost a part of our committee by the end of all these meetings. And that was the first meeting that Nathan's new appointee, Dan Lundeen, was able to attend, and so it was nice meeting him. On Friday the 30th, I also attended the CD18 meeting here at the county. And then yesterday, I had a Zoom meeting with Supporting Hands. Things are going well there. And right now, there's just some temporary delay in some federal funding, as I'm sure we'll continue to see throughout the next couple of months. And then again, the shotgun and rifle discussions, I had multiple people asked me when the meeting was, what we're gonna do, that sort of thing. So I did tell them the March 3rd meeting will be the open public discussion, that sort of thing, so that they can come and talk at that if they wanted to. So that's it.
County Attorney's Office, nothing? Okay, our administrator's on.
Thank you. Item A, notification of an electronic transfer of funds in the amount of $5 million from the Minnesota Association of Governments Investing for Counties account to the Security Bank checking account made on January 22nd, 2026 for bill payments. Item B, I'm adding a time here for the notification of a public hearing regarding the rifle hunting and shotgun-only zone changes on Tuesday, March 3rd, 2026 at 9:30 a.m. Item C, notification of board workshop following the board meeting on Tuesday, February 17th, 2026, at the McLeod County Government Center at 520 Chandler Avenue North, Glencoe, Minnesota. And then item D was added at the beginning of the meeting. Consider approving the collective bargaining agreement with the Law Enforcement Labor Services Licensed Sergeants, Local 297, for the period of January 1, 2026 through December 31st, 2027. And that does require a vote.
All right, as Sheila said, this does require a vote, so, board's wishes on accepting the bargaining agreement.
Mr. Chair, I will move request.
All right, motion's been made by Commissioner Schmalz, and I'll second it. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I will add that these are the negotiations that we enter into when I report that I'm in the Union Negotiations Committee meetings. We've spent a lot of time to get to this point, and I think, we're in a good place, and I would hope the fellow commissioners would trust the judgment of our committee and approve the motion before us.
Thank you, Commissioner Schmalz. I'll echo that because I didn't put in as much work as he did, but I've been sitting in since Commissioner Nagel has left. Any other discussion from the other board members? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
That's in. All right, with that, I just would like to go back to B just for, make sure we have a clarification. Is there an issue with 9:30 as the time for the hearing? I just want to double check that to make sure everybody's good with that time, so, very good. All right, it brings us to open forum. Anyone here wishing to address the board? Go ahead. Your
Do
name,
I have
please.
to give you my whole spiel? Tom Dahl.
No, just- that'll be
21767 Tagus Avenue, Hutchinson, Minnesota, Coma Township, Supervisor C, AKA Tom. There.
There you go.
There.
Thank you.
Just for the record, I just want you can't watch everything that's going on in the county since your last meeting, but I just wanted you to let you know that somebody has been asking a lot of questions of your administrator. And I'll give you some, do you have an organizational chart? Do you have a budget by department? Do you have a list of all your joint powers agreements? Do you have a list of all your contracts that are currently in effect, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? So having said that, I just want to give kudos and 2 thumbs up, as my grandkids would say, for the prompt responses that I'm getting out of this county. It's just unbelievable. The timely, it's very, very impressive. I'll just tell you that. So I want you to know that, and thank you very much for doing it, Sheila. And I know that there's a team behind you. Greatly appreciated. Second of all, to the board, you've provided the tools that allow your staff to do the work, and thank you for doing that. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Thank you. That's kudos to you.
Why do you look surprised?
I'm not surprised.
No, the Colleen does the budget by department every year, and that's always been very helpful. So she was able to just update it with some of the levy information, because we don't usually need to do that if someone doesn't ask for it, and thank you for looking at the information, so.
And questions are good. In case we don't have some answers, it's better found sooner than later, so. Anyone else wish to address the board? Come on up.
Hi, I'm Doyle Benson again from Collins Township. After I had passed out some of my ideas and thoughts and objections about the election and how the election gets done here in McLeod County, I have updated my sheet. It now supersedes the old one. I'd like to hand it to everyone, please.
All right. Thank you.
So on point number 2 that I read off in the previous meetings, I just explained the word sent a little bit better. So anyway, the ones that I did add was 9 and 10. Point 9 is more obviously of a state rule, but like I said, I'm just venting all of my concerns. So on point 9, absentee voting through 8 p.m. on election day, I object to that. And the final day for absentee voting should be the day before the election, just like years ago. And number 10 here, when I ran for county commissioner, I found it a little bit more difficult to see where the border was in the city of Hutchinson, as the rest of the borders for the district borders for McLeod County were more of the township borders. But inside Hutchinson, it's not always as clear especially where the southwest meets the northwest. So I object to the McLeod County the election map, the McLeod County election map showing the district and precinct boundaries, especially in the city of Hutchinson, in detail is not readily available, so I object to that. A street-by-street map of Hutchinson, breakup of county district boundaries and also precinct boundaries should be included in the election notices in the paper and on the McLeod County website as an opening pop-up notice with their respective ballot examples. So that I think is really important. As I campaigned and walked through the city of Hutchinson, there seemed to be a lot of people that didn't really know who their county commissioner was and where that boundary was. Also, when I talk about absentee ballots, so mail-in ballots should consist only of absentee ballots. I also have election, so I believe the rest were the same as last time. But yes, we all need to stick together in order to follow the Constitution. You know, Minnesota makes a lot of laws, but if they don't coincide with the Constitution, then they're really not laws at all. And that's really what I'm here standing up for, or trying to stand up for. When acquisitions happen, I believe that's not what the Constitution allows. I do when government acquisitions. And so I really, to promote people to stay in our areas, I feel we need to keep the liberty or the freedoms out there as much as we can. And again, the United States was built on grassroots up, not governments down. So that's what I continue to promote, and that's really what I came up to. And to me, the elections, in order to keep elections as honest elections will keep people feeling important and keep people in our area. And so these were just some concerns that came in my mind, and I really hope we can continue to have honest elections and keep things fair.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
points. Anyone else wishing to address the board? Press relations, I see no press. So our next county board meeting is 9 a.m. on Tuesday, February 17th, 2026 at the McLeod County Government Center, 520 Chandler Avenue North in Glencoe. With that, I look for a motion to recess.
Move recess, Mr. Chair.
Motion made by Commissioner Smalls, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Wright. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries. We're recessed.